Your Excellencies, members of the Oireachtas, distinguished guests, you're all very welcome this morning to European Movement Ireland's briefing on the French Presidency of the Council of the EU. My name is Noelle O'Connell and I'm the CEO of European Movement Ireland. And I will be chairing today's event, which is the first in the new year for us in 2022 in European Movement Ireland. And it's tradition to start as ever with our presidency briefing. So as we begin this new year, so too does the rotating presidency of the Council of the EU. And the motto behind France's presidency is recovery, strength, and a sense of belonging. I think that reflects the ongoing challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic still poses and the need for that continued and greater solidarity between all member states as we hopefully transition towards recovery. So the French presidency is the first of another presidency trio, which also includes Czechia and Sweden, that will conclude in June 2023. And this year, this will be France's 13th time, so lucky 13, in holding the presidency, when they last held it in 2008. And European Movement Ireland continues our long-standing tradition at this stage of producing a very useful calendar to complement the work programme of the presidency. It covers all EU institutional events, such as council meetings, European Parliament sessions, other political engagements to also include cultural and sporting events. I even think the Ireland-France Six Nations rugby clash is in there somewhere as well, and a lot of useful dates for your diary over the coming 6 months of the French presidency. So you'll have seen the online version prior to our countdown video before our event kicked off today. I'd encourage you all, if you haven't already, to download it on our website, europeanmovement.ie, via the EMI Publications tab on our home screen. So as one EU presidency begins, so does another one end. And I would also like to congratulate and express our thanks and appreciation to His Excellency Ambassador Stanislav Vadovic and all his colleagues at the Slovenian Embassy here in Dublin for not only a hugely successful Slovenian presidency at a very busy and challenging time for the EU, but for all their engagement and support with us here in European Movement Ireland throughout the Slovenian presidency, and to congratulate them all for an excellent job. And I hope he's getting some well-deserved rest. And now on to today's event. If I may, I would like to pay particular attention to my distinguished panel of speakers this morning. Delighted to be joined, as is tradition, and I think the Minister was saying already it is his fourth EM Ireland presidency briefing. Our Minister for European Affairs, Thomas Byrne TD, and especially Céad Míle Fáilte and bienvenue to His Excellency Ambassador Vincent Guérend, who has been France's ambassador to Ireland since September 2020. And he, along with the minister, will be giving a French presidency briefing outline, and the minister will then respond. So following both of the addresses by the ambassador and the minister, you then, ladies and gentlemen, have an opportunity to submit your questions from the audience, and you can send them to us here in European Movement Ireland on our events centre by email to events@europeanmovementireland.ie. Those of you active on Twitter can send in those questions and comments using the handle @EMIreland, and make sure to use the hashtag EU2022FR on social media. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, to get your questions in for the Minister and the Ambassador. So continuing our well-established tradition, we will firstly invite the Presidency Ambassador to deliver their opening remarks, then followed by the Minister for European Affairs. And I'm delighted to say, I have to say this, today's audience in terms of numbers and registrations is the most we've ever received for any of our presidency briefings in all our time of doing them. So chapeau, Ambassador Guérend, on that. And all in all, after today's session, we should be aiming to wrap up on the hour mark, so having you well on your way in that regard. And now it is my pleasure to invite the French Ambassador to Ireland to make his keynote address outlining France's presidency priorities in 2022. Monsieur l'Ambassadeur, la parole est à vous. Merci.
Thank you very much, dear Noelle, dear Minister, and dear guest, I'm delighted today to join the European Movement Ireland for this presentation. And I'm very grateful for your participation, dear Minister, in your very busy schedule. And thank you really much to you, Noelle, and to your team for this very enthusiastic and energetic preparation of this event. I'm very much looking forward to. It's indeed, as you mentioned, a great honor for France to hold the presidency for the 13th time. In my case, it's my third after the 2008 presidency in various capacity. I'm also, as you said, very grateful to our Slovenian friends for the excellent work they did. And we work also very closely with our dear Czech and Swedish colleague in the trio, as you mentioned too. It's also very nice to see that this presidency coincides, as it was said earlier this year, coincide with the full use of the Irish language in the Council and the EU institutions, something which very much welcome against the background of the importance of multilingualism for European of citizen, which we very much wish to develop even further. And now turning to my briefing indeed, next please indeed, I want to say a few words about the work program of the presidency and then of a few events which we will organize here locally in Ireland. Next please. And indeed, as I think it's worth underlining, also because he will address the European Parliament today as we speak, I think it's fair to say that the French presidency this time is very much also an outcome of a very strong engagement by the French president for European affairs. He was elected 2017 based on a very much pro-European agenda. And soon after being elected, you may remember that in September 2017, he delivered a landmark speech in the Sorbonne University presenting his ambition for Europe. And both for Europe for citizens, but also a Europe in the world, defending its values and its interests. Next, please. And so, as you said, Noelle, we have developed an agenda which is very much linked both in a long-term perspective, but also obviously influenced by the latest development over the last month and years, in particular of the COVID pandemic. And the first strong pillar or strong priority is recovery from an economic point of view after the pandemic, but also recovery through transformation, meaning the ecological and digital transformation, something which, of course, dovetails the priorities of the European Commission and its current mandate. The second item is strength, i.e. promote, as I mentioned, EU values and interest in a world which is more and more, let's say, challenging and even tough in terms of international relation. And the third one is belonging, something which maybe goes without saying, but which is so important. We want the EU to serve the citizen, to serve the EU citizen, and to be cherished and loved by its citizens. We want this sense of belonging being even better promoted. And by the way, as we mentioned, multilingualism is something which also strengthens the sense of belonging. Next, please. So in terms of, let's say, main, if I may, digest of priorities, I can mention climate, social, and digital. Next, please. So in terms of digital technology, the priority, as you know, is to make the EU and in particular the single market fit for today's economy, which is much more digital. And we can build on the very good work made by the Slovenian presidency, in particular on two very important texts, which is, as you know, which are covering the Digital Service and Digital Market Act. So we will push this through now in the trilogue with the European Parliament based on the consensus reached in Council. The second large important priority is the ecological transition. And I'll come back to this. It's obviously something extremely important, but also with a specific priority put on the establishment of a carbon pricing mechanism at the EU borders for imported product. I will come back to this. And the third priority is certainly social, with in particular the establishment of European text legislation on minimum wages. It's not about setting a single European wage for the whole of Europe. It's for creating national mechanism which would set minimum wages for social justice and welfare in each and every member state. And now, getting further into detail, next please. Indeed, if you look at the text, as many as 300 texts currently under discussion at EU level between Council and Parliament. So a huge number of text. But let me just flag maybe 20 of them. On finance, we have 3 texts which are very important. It's well known on taxation, the Stability and Growth Pact. On climate, we have the famous Fit for 55 package with as many as 8 texts, and we will all push them through as far as we can with a priority I mentioned on this border carbon adjustment mechanism. On institution, I'll come back to this. It's certainly very important also with the closure, hopefully, of the conference on the future of Europe. Next, please. On justice and home affairs, certainly also something which is extremely important. There is the Schengen reform, the Schengen border code, and asylum migration pact, which will also deserve a lot of political attention, with 8 texts. On justice, 7 texts. On internal market, 3 texts, including one on sustainable corporate governance. Digital, I mentioned the 2 texts which are important. Social, 4 texts, in particular with also the minimum wage one. And on the EU-UK relationship, we still have to adopt also a text on autonomous measure. So you can see a very heavy legislative agenda, but very much also in response to the challenges faced by the EU within the EU and internationally. Talking about indeed international exposure, there's also a lot of discussion going on, and we had just last weekend the informal Foreign Affairs meeting in Brest, in Brittany. Next, please, with a discussion on the so-called strategic compass, which with a lot of progress, and we want this text to be endorsed by the European Council in its March meeting. Next, please. There would be also a strong emphasis put on Africa with an EU-Africa summit mid-February in Brussels. And here the ambition is really to create a space of solidarity, security, and lasting prosperity and stability with our big southern neighbor, with a huge challenge, if you look at the long term. And so this is something which is a key priority for our presidency. Next, please. But beyond, let's say, Africa, or beyond even the Indo-Pacific, which is also something certainly very important, we have also the Western Balkans, much closer to our borders, where we want also to pay a lot of attention to, with a conference which will be held in June on a concrete cooperation project with the countries in the Western Balkan region. Next, please. And I couldn't mention our agenda and our priorities without mentioning indeed the conference on the future of Europe. It was an idea also tabled by the French president back in 2019 in a letter to the Europeans. And we really believe that there's a lot of virtue in letting the European citizen express themselves. There's been also very good discussion here in Ireland. And we hope that this conference can be concluded under this presidency. Next, please. More generally, and even beyond, let's say, the 6 months, the ambition expressed by France for the EU is very much to develop an EU until 2030 and beyond, which is based on a strong investment in the future, that also the European leverage at European level, based on values, and certainly on democracy, rule of law, putting the emphasis on youth, culture, and also given the context on health. And if you look next, please, at the kind of star of five long-term priorities, it's certainly also to think even more about a new growth model, and this will be discussed in an informal European Council mid-March in Paris. Look also at the values underpinning our democracies with better protection instruments. As I said, invest even more in youth with the expansion of the Erasmus program, which has proven to be so successful over the last 30 years or so. Culture with a Europe Academy bringing together some 100 academics from 27 countries, and we had also invited Linda Doyle, the Provost of Trinity, to a debate, and health, given the again challenge of the time. Next, please. Very quickly, maybe just to tell you that in France there will be as many as 400 events around the presidency at all levels: head of states, minister, civil servants, or civil society, to also accompany this ambition. Next, please. There will be spread around France, also in order to reach out as much as we can to citizens throughout the country. And here on the map, you just have the meetings at head of state or minister level. And as we had already one last week, we'll have one this week. We have Minister Simon Harris, for example, in Paris this week, or in video conferencing on higher education. And next week, we'll have an event on justice of home affairs, etc. So it's just an extremely intense agenda. Next, please. And just to focus on the events at head of state level, we had obviously the traditional visit of the college early January. Today we have the address of the president in the European Parliament. We'll have a summit on ocean in Brest on the 11th. Then I mentioned the Africa Summit, the informal head of state summit on a new European growth model, etc. So a very also intense engagement at head of state level on this presidency. In Ireland, and I will conclude here, we also have, next please, a couple of events, some just for the diplomatic community. As you know, we meet regularly at head of mission level, and we'll have a bi-monthly meeting in particular with cabinet members. We also have to organize a number of events for a more, let's say, interested audience for European subjects, be it about defense, be it about digital, about women. And we will have also events for a broader public, in particular around the 9th of May, Europe Day. And on that day, we'll have two sorts of engagement. One which is about cinema, with the screening of so-called shorts, very short films in various Irish locations. And there was a strong agreement around the table of ambassadors here, also to reach out to school children on the 9th of May, and maybe even on the 10th of May, the 50th anniversary of the ratification of the accession treaty for Ireland, to spread, in a way, the good news to Irish pupils. And you will have this also on the web. Next, please. You have a series of events of this kind. So, and next, please. So I conclude here by saying that there is this presidency. It's a huge opportunity to try to engage in more with our citizens, both in France but throughout. We want an EU which is here to serve the people, also immediately for immediate concern, but also for long-term challenges. And as we keep saying, we believe that the EU is the best answer to many of the challenges we face. And so count on France to put its clout to move things forward. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Merci, Vincent. Thank you so much for that excellent and very comprehensive overview of what is a really ambitious but exciting set of priorities for France's presidency of the Council of the EU. And if I may as well, thank you for your mention of the end of the derogation of Irish, of Gaeilge this year, and the Irish language status as a full working language of the EU. And that is something ourselves in European Movement Ireland, and I know the Minister, are delighted to see and are very encouraged by. Agus is mór going inis go bhfuil an Gaeilge mar ceann go omláin fiúil de cuid an Aontais Orbig agus táimid ag súil le leanúnt lenar cuid ibre an Gaeilge leis an ara an Rialtas agus na institútí sna blianta atá amach rowing. So fantastic to see that, and it's great to see we've some questions already coming in. So I think both the Minister and the Ambassador are going to be busy during our Q&A, and for those of you who haven't sent in any questions or comments, please do so through our live event centre by email, events@europeanmovement.ie, or on Twitter, as you'll see on the ticker tape on the screen. Now, I'm delighted to invite our Minister for European Affairs, Thomas Byrne, to make his address. And Minister, very much looking forward to your presentation. And I'll hand over to you, Minister. Thank you.
Gur mágad Noelle, agus bála mo bhuichas a gháil leis an níomhreacht Eorpach in Éireann, Noelle agus an Irin Galéireann sin, ócáid iontacha seo inniuh agus midig súil leis an séimhí atá rowing le Uachtaránach na Franca. I also want to say initially at the start that our thoughts, of course, are with the Italian ambassador and the family, friends and colleagues of David Sassoli, the President of the European Parliament, the late President of the European Parliament, and his recent and untimely passing. A very popular and impactful Italian politician and provided great leadership to the Parliament. And of course, we wish his successor, Roberta Metsola, well. And it's great to see a woman from a very small EU member state take one of the great democratic offices of our European Union at this time. Je voudrais aussi remercier Monsieur l'Ambassadeur Guérend pour son intervention et sa présentation très claire des priorités de la France pour les 6 mois à venir. Avec mes collègues, nous nous félicitons de collaborer étroitement avec vous pendant la présidence. À nouveau, en raison de la crise sanitaire, cet événement se déroule virtuellement. J'espère que nous pourrons tous nous réunir en personne bientôt, mais d'ici là, je suis ravi que nous puissions perpétuer la tradition de marquer le lancement de la nouvelle présidence de l'Union européenne. Ambassador Guérend has very clearly and helpfully set out France's priorities for the coming months, and I thought it would be helpful if I did the same in respect of Ireland today. Ireland is very supportive of the priorities set out by President Macron and by Ambassador Guérend for France's presidency of the Council of the European Union. The 3 overarching goals of the presidency relating to a sovereign Europe, a new European model for growth and investment, and a more human European Union reflect a number of the most pressing issues for the Union at the moment, and I have high hopes for what can be achieved during your presidency. Some of the key areas to be addressed regarding Europe's sovereignty include the reformation of the Schengen zone, defining an EU strategic compass and stabilizing the EU's neighbourhood. Enlargement of the Union, particularly in the Western Balkans, is a priority shared by Ireland, and I look forward to innovative approaches from the presidency to improve ties with the region. Transitioning to a digital EU would be a long road, but an emphasis on the digital single market as well as on developing high-tech sectors in Europe are important steps. Integral to the success of these digital goals is progress on climate and effecting a green transition. Maintaining unity and promoting democracy in Europe are very important components of the more human EU that the presidency is seeking to build. So it's fitting this year that we will also celebrate the European Year of Youth, and that the Erasmus programme, which I believe is 35 years old today, is being expanded to encompass mobility opportunities like internships, apprenticeships and traineeships. This and the fostering of European studies is something that we strongly support in Ireland. I welcome also the commitment of the French presidency in advancing the Conference on the Future of Europe. This is very positive, particularly as the project is now entering a more intensive phase. I am pleased that there is greater clarity regarding the timetable for the conference during the first half of 2022. This promises to be a very active and full calendar led on the Council side by my good friend and colleague Clement Bone. Preparations for Ireland's engagement with these events, beginning with this weekend's plenary, is ongoing. I'll be attending that plenary virtually because this weekend also marks the 50th anniversary of the signing of the accession treaty to the European Union by Ireland. So we'll have some events with the Taoiseach as we begin to celebrate the anniversary of our 50 years membership of the European Union, which of course falls on the 1st of January next, but there are quite a number of events in 1972 which we'll be commemorating. Promoting greater citizen engagement in the conference as a whole in the coming months is something that needs to be prioritised and pursued. We should aim to reach the conference endpoint with a broad and representative sense of the future direction that our citizens would like to see Europe pursue. These debates and citizen engagement with the Union are particular relevance to us, as I said, because we're marking 50 years since Ireland, together with Denmark, the UK and Norway, signed the Treaty of Accession this week to join the then EEC. There's only two of us left. Unfortunately, Norway didn't join at the time, ultimately, and then, of course, the UK, as we all know, to our regret, has left the European Union. So this weekend, we're going to mark with the Taoiseach, Mr. Coveney, the historic anniversary for Ireland, which is really the most important moment in Irish foreign policy since the foundation of the state. Over the next 18 months, we will be observing significant milestones on the road to our membership and into the early period of our membership through a broad programme of events and initiatives aimed at stimulating reflection, debate and exchange on the Irish-EU relationship and how Ireland can best contribute to a strong and shared future European Union. I'm also sure that there will be opportunities for our ambassadors to be involved as the programme evolves. A key theme that is unsurprisingly emerging from the Conference of the Future of Europe is climate change. So the French presidency comes at a key moment of the Union's collective climate change endeavours. We welcome the Fit for 55 package of proposed legislation from the Commission, and we're at the moment working with other member states in the Commission and the Parliament to agree these proposals and to realise the ambition that they represent. Last November, the government launched the Climate Action Plan 2021, setting out additional policies, measures and actions that must be taken across every government department, every public body and across all sectors to bring about the significant changes needed to transform our society and to achieve our climate change targets. Our priority now is ensuring that the EU 2030 target of at least 55% meets our climate ambition and that these targets are delivered collectively by the EU in the most efficient way possible, balancing considerations of fairness, cost effectiveness and solidarity, and ensuring that no one's left behind. I'm conscious that the French presidency will also continue to tackle the ongoing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The last number of weeks have seen record numbers of COVID and Omicron cases across the EU and in Ireland, of course, and I see that in France as well this week. I hope we've reached some sort of peak without the surge of hospitalizations that we've previously seen. We very much welcome the publication of the revised proposals for safe and free movement in the EU using the digital COVID cert from 1st of February. I think we're going to finalise that at the General Affairs Council next week. The digital COVID cert has been one of the great success stories of 2021. We've recently commenced issuing digital COVID certs, which are with the booster added because of the booster doses that took place over the Christmas period. We welcome the success of the Commission's initiative also with regard to the procurement of vaccines against COVID-19 on behalf of member states, including the recent market authorization of Novavax vaccine, Nuvaxovid. Universal and equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines is a priority for us, and Ireland welcomes the leadership and collaborative approach taken by the EU with regard to vaccine sharing. We also welcome the ongoing work on revising the Commission's recommendations concerning free movement of persons in the EU. We will work collectively with partners in the coming weeks as discussions are finalised on this. Migration, of course, a major challenge, indeed a moral responsibility for Europe, and it must be urgently addressed. Otherwise, ordinary men, women and children will continue to die. Over 2,700 people have been reported dead or missing while seeking to cross the Mediterranean or Atlantic routes in 2021. It's a complex issue. Multifaceted response is needed. So we fully support EU efforts to deal with migration in a comprehensive and holistic manner, including through resettlement, increased legal pathways for migration, tackling the scourge of people trafficking, addressing the root causes and reforming the common asylum system. I know the French presidency has been progressing discussion on the Migration Pact, and we look forward to considering the proposals in greater detail. Cooperation and partnership with key third countries will be crucial to address the wide range of migration issues faced by member states and third countries. And quite an amount on this has been done in recent months, with the formulation of detailed action plans covering 8 priority countries of origin and transit. We will continue to engage constructively with partners to ensure the EU has an asylum and migration system fit for purpose, can adapt to disproportionate pressure or various crises, and which reduce the need for migrants to undertake dangerous journeys to reach the European Union. On the subject of migration, the de-escalation at the Belarus border since November is encouraging. Of course, it is the winter too, so it would have been particularly dangerous if this situation wasn't de-escalated. But it is testament to the coordinated efforts of EU member states and the European institutions of what we can achieve together. We stand in solidarity with Poland, Lithuania and Latvia, and indeed those people who've effectively been people trafficked for hybrid warfare purposes. This is a problem for all of Europe, which we address together in solidarity and unity. Ireland has co-sponsored the 5th package of sanctions against Lukashenko and his regime and his associates. We're willing to consider the 6th package, of course, now being proposed by some member states. It is essential that we fully review the impact of the existing sanctions first and see how we can make them even more effective. We must never lose sight of the ongoing repression and human rights violations in Belarus itself. We continue to support the Belarus opposition's call for new elections that are free, fair and internationally monitored, and we'll continue to engage with the Belarus opposition as well. I very much welcome the French Presidency's intentions to maintain the momentum generated by their predecessors on the rule of law issue. Vitally important for the European Union that this, what is a foundational value, it's a sine qua non of our European Union, that is promoted and preserved. The opportunity for dialogue afforded by the Article 7 process at the General Affairs Council has an important role to play in helping the EU address rule of law challenges. And I welcome the French Presidency's commitment to hold a further round of country chapter dialogues that will discuss another 5 member states chapters from the Commission's 2021 rule of law report. This is an opportunity for discussion and mutual learning and very worthwhile. Judgment, of course, is anticipated in the coming months from the Court of Justice in the action challenging the EU's rule of law budget conditionality regulation. We've expressed the view, we've joined the case as well in support of the Council, and that the regulation is fair, proportionate, and serves a legitimate and very important purpose. On the Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act, we welcome the Digital Services Act as an important and much needed proposal which will protect consumers and safeguard the fundamental rights of all using the internet. The general approach taken by the European Council represents a well-balanced approach. On the Digital Markets Act, we believe this can provide real benefits for consumers and business. It will open new opportunities for SMEs to compete and to scale up. And we urge and encourage the French Presidency to retain the essence of the general approach which is agreed and which we feel is proportionate, flexible and future-proof. If I may conclude, of course, with a word on the EU's relationship with the UK, I am pleased that Vice President Šefčovič could meet at a very early stage with the Foreign Secretary Elizabeth Truss. It was very important that they got together with their teams, personally and privately. I think that was really, really important. But it is also always important to remember the protocol was agreed to protect the gains of the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement, and to mitigate the negative consequences for people and business in Northern Ireland of the UK's decision to leave the EU, the single market and the customs union. It was not the wish of the people of Northern Ireland. Throughout the Brexit process, EU unity and solidarity has been our greatest strength, and its endurance has been steadfast. Ireland will continue to support the Commission and the Presidency in its work towards securing a new direction, a positive forward-looking EU-UK partnership. And also just to thank the solidarity that each member state has given, the interest as well that each member state and the European institutions have taken in Northern Ireland. I think it's noticed in Northern Ireland, and it's very, very important because listening is a way to get solutions to the issues and the problems that are there. So in conclusion, thanks everybody for being there. Hopefully we'll have one in person. I thought the last one would be the last virtual. Look, we have to stay safe. Thanks to Noelle and colleagues. Thanks to the outgoing Slovenian presidency, of course, Ambassador Vidovic, for your work in guiding the Council of the EU throughout your presidency, what proved to be difficult circumstances. Enfin, permettez-moi de souhaiter à Monsieur l'Ambassadeur et à son équipe tout le succès possible pour votre présidence. Merci.
Thank you very much, Minister. And like you, I thought too we might have turned the corner and might be having this French presidency briefing in person. But who's to know? We might manage an in-person midway checkpoint or perhaps a sum up after 6 months in person. And thank you very much, Minister, for that fantastic overview. And delighted to see, ladies and gentlemen, the questions are coming in thick and fast. So if with the Minister and the Ambassador's understanding, I'm going to direct the particular questions to whether they're addressed to the Minister or the Ambassador, and I am going to scrupulously take them in order that they have been submitted. So first up and in first place, delighted the first question is coming from our good friend Shona Murray of Euronews, and this one is for you, Ambassador. And Shona is wondering that given the continued confrontation between Poland and the EU, the ECJ, over the refusal to comply with judgments, and Hungary over its deteriorating democracy, what are the French government's priorities on the rule of law?
Thank you, Noelle, and thank you, Shona, for this very important question. On rule of law, maybe two things. As Minister Thomas Byrne rightly said, France as a member state and certainly as a presidency will continue to stand by the European principle, by the Charter of Fundamental Rights, by the legal order within the EU, and as we say in French, the hierarchy of norms from treaty, fundamental rights charter, and other treaty obligation. And these obligations have to be respected by all member states, because this is the cement and the cornerstone of our union. And each and every member state, when acceding to the EU, has committed to respect those fundamental values. So that's, in a way, not negotiable, to be negotiated. What we will secondly continue is the engagement with these member states, be it in the Council under the Article 7 proceedings, or indeed through the legal proceedings which have been launched. And so it will be an engagement, a very, in a way, tough engagement when needed, but also a dialogue with those member states. And you may recall that President Macron also visited Hungary back in November, had also very straightforward talks with Prime Minister Orban. Previously, he had also been to Poland. And so we want to continue to discuss with his member states, where, by the way, there are also internal debates, as you can see in the political discussion in Hungary and in Poland. It's not as if there was no internal discussion about the political orientation made over the last couple of years. And so we will continue to challenge all those who have, in a way, departed from what we believe, and we'll see how the judges decide ultimately, are fundamental values to be respected by all member states. So in a nutshell, as Mr. Byrne said, yes, we will very much continue to defend EU values and the EU rule of law, and we will continue to do it through the proceedings, through the legal proceedings, and through dialogue with those member states.
Merci, Vincent. Thank you very much for that. And the next question, I think, is also coming from Brussels. I'm delighted he's able to join us. Our good friend Tony Connell, Europe editor with RTE. And Minister, I might pose this question to you first, and then I might ask the Ambassador to respond. Tony's question is, with regard to EU taxonomy, is it right that nuclear energy should be considered a green energy source that should attract investment? So, Minister, I think you're on mute there. Are you?
I might let the French presidency answer that one first, if that's okay.
Okay. No problem at all. And in fairness, I think I don't see who it's directed to. So, Vincent, I'll go to you first, please, and then maybe
yes,
we might Minister.
Thank you, Noelle, and thank you, Tony, for this extremely important question on an extremely important subject. And I know you are following very closely the EU discussion across the board, and this one maybe has been subject to less discussion here in Ireland. But you know that in many member states, it was, including in Germany and certainly France and other Central European countries, it has been extremely hotly debated. So I don't know how much our Irish friends here in the audience are familiar with this, but it's a key issue about what kind of financing we want for our energy transition in the years and decades to come, and whether or not some let's say labeling of certain sources of energy should be made in order to attract even more investment in this area, again to allow for a greening of the energy mix in member states. And here France, but along with many other member states in Europe, is of the strong view that nuclear is a key and irreplaceable, you cannot replace it, a contributor to a low carbon energy production. As a matter of fact, if you look at France, which has probably 60% of energy produced by nuclear, we have the lowest CO2 emission in electric production in Europe, with probably something like 40 kilo per megawatt, whereas others have 10 times more. And so we believe it's a strong contributor to a low carbon energy production. We well know, of course, that in many member states, nuclear is not popular, to say the least, but we believe that based on science and based on now 50 or 60 years of nuclear energy production, one cannot discard nuclear production, and one should let member states where there is a social and political consensus to have nuclear to continue to develop it and to finance it. And so that's why we were very much supportive of the EU proposal tabled. And as you know, there are several kind of so-called delegated acts to be adopted. And we think this goes into the right direction in the best interest of reaching out the EU objectives towards a decarbonized economy by 2050.
Great. Thank you, Ambassador. Minister, did you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, there's obviously discussion going on and debate going on. We have to move to the zero carbon in accordance with our targets. That has to happen. There's obviously a transition process in the middle. Gas certainly is going to be a big part of that. And we've always said that. We've never ruled out nuclear being part of that either. Yes, we don't have nuclear production in this country, and we do recognise that there are various shades of opinion on the issue of nuclear power throughout member states, and I think that has to be respected. There are countries like France, very strong nuclear production. We have countries like Austria where they had a referendum not to have nuclear power. So everybody has to be respected. And we won't be generating nuclear power ourselves here, but we haven't ruled it out. But look, there are ongoing discussions among the member states, the Commission, etc., over the next period, and we'll see where those move. But the ultimate ambition has to be to get us out of this place where our emissions are really damaging, as we know, to the planet, really existentially damaging to the planet. We have to move on. But how we move on in the period of transition to how we move on, I suppose, is what's under discussion at this particular point.
Great. Thank you, Minister. So I hope Tony's happy. Got two answers from both of you there. Fantastic. The next question, Minister, might come to you. It's come from Ambassador Adrian Palm, Netherlands Ambassador to Ireland, and it's for you, Minister. And the Ambassador's question is that climate change is one of the main subjects during the French presidency. The carbon border adjustment mechanism and the emissions trading system are two of the key issues in the coming months, where many member states have opposing views. Could Minister Byrne elaborate on the Irish position here and where he sees a possible landing zone for EU agreement?
What I would say is, of course, we support the EU ambition. It's the EU ambition is absolutely consistent with our national ambition. So we have a climate change legislation for the first time ever. That's really, really important. That's domestic climate change legislation. It's really important for us, not just sending a signal of what we want to do, but legally binding targets as well. I think is really, really important. So what we're doing is consistent with what's happening at a European level. What's happening on the Fit for 55 package is that it's being, obviously, the package was proposed by the European Commission. It's been under consideration by our Department of Climate ever since. And around this time, the Cabinet would be considering the Irish position on it. So I'm going to let the Cabinet discuss that. And I think it's fair to say that very, very soon, I think the Irish general position will be outlined on this. But of course, there will be much more detailed negotiations to happen on every aspect of it. But Ireland is certainly going to be at the forefront on what I would call the progressive side of this debate, which I think is where Europeans are at, to be quite frank, but also where we need to be at as well. So on each of the individual policies, I think you'll see announcements, you'll see position papers, statements from the government, from the Cabinet, in the I would say the coming few weeks actually, and the Cabinet is currently considering this in great detail.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Minister. The next question, Ambassador, is for you, and it's from Erwan Fourré for the Centre for European Policy Studies. And Erwan is wondering that his comment is, the Western Balkan region continues to be a source of tension in the EU's nearest neighbourhood. What will the French presidency do to speed up the accession process for the EU to respect its commitments to the regions and allow negotiations to start with Albania and North Macedonia by lifting the Bulgarian veto?
Thank you, and thank you for this question on a region which is, as I mentioned before, not far away on another continent, but really, if you look at the map, at the core of the European Union, between Italy and Hungary and Greece and other neighborly countries. So it's a question where there has already been a lot of French attention over the last couple of years. We had a national French strategy towards a French the Western Balkans already adopted in 2018 or 19. And so we believe that we should work on the two tracks, certainly on the track towards accession, and we are in favor, maybe it's not very well known, but I repeat it here, we're in favor of the launch of the accession negotiation for both countries, North Macedonia and Albania. So we're in favor of it, and we hope to open this negotiation soon. We know that there are some bilateral issues, in particular with Bulgaria, and we really hope that these issues can be settled as soon as possible, because it's in the interest of the EU to have momentum in the region towards accession. Secondly, we also believe that since negotiation for accession will inevitably last a certain number of years, by experience, we need at the same time a real and even stronger engagement of the EU and EU member states towards those societies and economies through even more investment, even more attention, even more support to the civil society, to the economy of these two countries, which have been over the years struggling to cope with the many challenges they face. And so it's really much on the two tracks which we want to work and indeed draw the attention at the highest level, meaning head of state and government.
Great. Thank you, Ambassador. Minister, did you want to come in on that there?
Yeah, just to acknowledge a number of things as well, and thank the Ambassador for his contribution. We in Ireland are passionate about accession. It has to happen. We have to obviously get it right and make sure that all the conditions are fulfilled that are required to join the European Union, but we want it to happen. And I would like to acknowledge the previous presidency. I think at the very last council meeting, we did get unanimous agreement on council conclusions. I think that was very significant. Obviously, we'd like it to go further to open negotiations, but it didn't. But we did get those. We weren't able to achieve them the year before. I also wish every success on new government in Bulgaria and in North Macedonia as well. There are new people, and I note in the last few days there's been a lot of bilateral engagement between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. We very much welcome that. There are certainly bilateral issues, and we strongly feel that they should be dealt with bilaterally. And it's really encouraging to see ongoing discussions between those two countries and talking. We think that'll work and certainly support the French presidency in all their efforts to move this on in the coming weeks and months.
Great, thank you very much, Minister. This next question, I think, is a bit of a two-hander, so I would ask you perhaps both to respond to the specific point in the question addressed to each of you. And it's come in from Diarmid, and he is asking, his question is, could the panel comment on Ireland's withdrawal from the UN mission in Mali and the relationship between the French and Malian governments and the prospect of further military engagement in the Sahel region? So, Minister, did you want to take the first part of it, and perhaps Ambassador, if you wanted to comment on the second?
If possible, I won't, because I really have no ministerial responsibility whatsoever there, so it just wouldn't be correct for me to comment.
Sure.
So that's okay.
No problem at all. Ambassador, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, certainly. Was maybe a couple of remarks. Firstly, over the last almost 10 years and more, there have been a strong European engagement in Mali and more generally in the Sahel region, which is, as you know, this sub-Saharan zone stretching almost from Senegal, Mauritania to Chad, where one can see a number of challenges. First, there is a very strong demographic expansion, which is, well, in a way, a fact, and I don't have to judge whether it's positive or negative, but it's a challenge because the population is growing very, very fast, and it's a challenge for the local governments. Secondly, we have a problem of, in certain case, let's say, government challenges with coups and in certain case, weak states. And thirdly, we had indeed more generally in this region the surge of Daesh, ISIS, or various local forms, which have fragilized even further those states. And so, against this background, the EU has been right to invest a lot of energy, capital, in order to help those countries to overcome those challenges. Because if we don't, we know well that one of the consequences is that many of the youth try, for understandable reason, to have a better life elsewhere, and in the shores of the Mediterranean, and sometimes in very tragic conditions. And so it's in your best interest to help those countries. Secondly, in Mali in particular, as you know, there have been 2 coups within a year, and now we see a government, a junta with no clear timeline towards the restoration of normal democratic life. And we see a junta which has, and it's proof, I mean, it's a fact, has asked for the support of this Russian private mercenaries. And you have had local sanctioned by the West African countries and regional organization sanctions against this junta, to which the EU has also added its own sanction. And so we have politically a very tricky situation, but where we believe the Malian population is not best served, and where we have to see, in discussion with the Malian government, how we continue to support the Malian authorities towards maintaining peace and the restoration of some kind of a normal life. But this proves to be extremely difficult if this junta is just joining hands with those mercenaries whose track record in Africa has been just appalling. And so this is at stake now these days.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And ladies and gentlemen, fantastic questions coming in. So with the Minister and the Ambassador's indulgence, we might just go 5 minutes over, because I have a couple of more excellent comments and questions coming in for you. And the next comment is from Ivalo Kalkin, the Executive Director of Eurofound, so not too far away from us at all, over in Loughlinstown. And Ivalo states and comments that he wishes success to the French presidency. I'm sure their ambitious programme will leave an impact and further lead Europe through these challenging times. Eurofound is actively contributing to the priorities with relevant and unique research. On the green transition, we engaged in research on its expected effect on different groups of citizens, notably on income distribution. I hope this would allow to gather an even larger public support. And obviously we wish Ivalo and all our friends in Eurofound continued success in the important work that they're doing, and particularly in relation to their upcoming important foundation event in March. Ambassador, next question I think is for you from Ian Talbot, the Chief Executive of Chambers Ireland. And he has said that, Ambassador, many thanks for your presentation. We wish France well with a comprehensive and important set of priorities. Energy security and cost have somewhat rapidly become a source of immediate concern for businesses and consumers alike. Is this something that your presidency will need to invest some efforts in tackling?
Thank you, and thank you for the interest of Chambers Ireland to this presentation. Obviously, energy security is a huge issue, which is not new, but which has bounced back with a vengeance for the last 6 months or so. Also, in the wake of what happens in Eastern Europe on gas, in particular gas supply. So here, our view is that. We should really tackle this challenge with the two main long-term objectives in mind, as the Minister recalled, both the greening and the green transition, and how to have in the future an even greener energy production. And secondly, which is a long-haul objective where we have to start now, as said before. And secondly, certainly the sovereignty agenda, where the EU on such a strategic element of our economy and society, which is energy supply, has to better master its fate and its sources of supply. And so we strongly support all the EU efforts towards an energy union, towards a better connection of the grids. And as you know, there's this famous Celtic connector, this €1 billion project, which will soon, as of 2026, connect the European continental grids through France and the Irish grid. We support certainly the expansion of renewable energy everywhere, and this is also paramount. We support the better, let's say, regulation of energy consumption through the retrofittings, through the better management of energy consumption, and all the efforts made. It was mentioned on the so-called ETS scheme. You know, this trade emission scheme is key. It's extremely technical, extremely heavy financially, with huge price tags. But it's key that we reflect together what transport, what buildings have to contribute to the long-term objective of carbon neutral economy. So on all of these, we have to work together. It's true that the pressure on the energy prices, sudden pressure over the last couple of months, have made this even more difficult and painful for our citizen. But we have to tackle this from all angles together as EU, and it's a strong French priority.
Great. Thank you, Ambassador. Minister, I might just come to you in relation to the conference on the future of Europe, which of course you are leading on as Minister with responsibility here in Ireland. Can I ask you, Minister, what are your expectations from the deliberations that have taken place to date, where we both have the plenary this week in taking place in Strasbourg, your own very active involvement in it, and obviously, as the Ambassador already mentioned in his presentation, it's due to conclude during the French presidency. We in Ireland have such a strong track record of participatory democracy and citizen engagement. What are your hopes and aspirations as we kind of, I suppose, are coming up to the end point of it, perhaps in terms of the formal side of the plenaries? or the midway point, I suppose.
Yeah, probably not the end, all right. What I've been hoping for all along is to try and sort of spark an interest from people, from communities, from organizations to get involved, because the great thing about this process is that you don't have to sort of be at officially moderated events. You don't have to be at the plenary to have your voice heard. You can have your own debates, your own discussions. You can contribute to the online digital platform in all our languages, and people can read them in all our languages as well, any of the submissions that are made. So last week I attended a good event organised by the Committee of the Regions, where a number of municipalities across Europe kind of had discussions at the same time. So I was involved with Carlow, where the mayor of Carlow was part of a Committee of the Regions delegation, and it was a very interesting event that they would do all those things together, reaching out locally but doing it together. So I'm again encouraging as many organisations as possible, particularly organisations, whether it's chambers, whether it's farmers, whether it's civil society in general, schools, young people. We did schools events with Billy Keller MEP. I'm hoping to have my own as well. Get that message out there that you can take part in this. Your ideas then go to the digital platform. Then they go to the, ultimately, we hope, to the plenary, and then conclusions that the leaders will have to look at. So the priority always has been to get as many citizens involved as possible, to let them know how easy it is to get involved. But then, as we reach what's now the midway point, we start seeing some conclusions coming out. What are they? Examining them. Member states then have to deliver, because at the end of the day, it'll be the leaders of the member states of the European Union, at the European Council, that really will be tasked, I think, with setting the agenda here. Ultimately, they're going to have to make sure they listen to what's being said, and that what's been said also, that it's deliverable, that we can actually do it. A lot of talk there about democracy, a lot of talk about climate in particular. I think that there's huge potential. We look forward to it, whatever it brings out.
Thank you, Minister. Ambassador, just two questions for you, and then I might give the final word to the Minister before we wrap up. But I just want to get these two questions in, if I may. The first one is from Olena Shalaput from the Embassy of Ukraine here in Ireland. And her question and comment is, thank you, Ambassador, for this great presentation. Could you please give more detail of France's priority in the defence dimension? Particularly, how does it foresee to address challenges to the security of Europe amid unprecedented Russian military activity in the region, the build-up over the Ukrainian border, and threats to invade European countries?
Thank you.
So I might give you that one first, and then I have another question. So just conscious of time, Ambassador, if that's okay.
Yes. Well, firstly, and thank you for this question. On European defense, I think it's no secret to say that this has been a long-standing French priority of the last 25 years or more. Remember even the big efforts made in the mid-90s on the then West European Union. And these days, we very much focus indeed on capacity, but also on strategic thinking. And that's the whole point about the strategic compass, which is the first document ever of this kind where the EU share a same strategic analysis. When it comes more precisely to the recent developments between Russia and Ukraine, this is, of course, of the utmost importance. There is this was subject of a very long discussion last weekend in Brest at the informal council I was referring to before. There is a very strong Franco-German attention to this in the so-called Normandy format, which has been set up already back in 2014, at the time when there was the previous crisis in eastern Ukraine and Crimea. And so there's a strong political engagement at the highest level on the French side and German side, with, of course, the full support of the EU institution. We discuss this also with our American friends. I think we want to give extreme attention to the political negotiation. We've also made clear that any infringement of the Ukrainian sovereignty would be met with a sanction which would be very significant. And so we continue to support with no ambiguity the sovereignty of Ukraine in its current borders.
Thank you. And Minister, I see you want to come in on that point there.
Briefly, can I just say in relation to Ukraine, Ireland is obviously militarily neutral, but Ukraine has the right to determine its own future. Ukraine has the right to its own territorial integrity, and we would certainly support Ukraine in those rights it has as a nation. And I'm really glad that Ireland last year opened its embassy in Ukraine as well. I think it's a very important step forward in bilateral relations between Ireland and Ukraine.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. And last question briefly, Ambassador, if I may, from one of our long-standing members, Lorcan Blake. And his question is, with the EU dependent on Russia for more than 60% of its total energy imports of oil and gas, is the French sovereignty agenda for the EU subject to significant limitation?
Well, yes and no, meaning I don't want to be too academic here, but this engagement with Russia on energy dates back to 1970s, remember, and so there was at the time the strategic choice made by many European countries also to engage into trade with Russia and to create let's say a mutual support. Now, I know well that many of our eastern member states have energy dependency, which they have not necessarily chosen, which is just a heritage of the past. But all in all, yes, the EU still, or many EU member states still rely very much on gas and oil imports from Russia. But we also know well that Russia is also very much depending on these purchased by European consumers and member states, and that they have no alternative to sell this to Russia. So there's also a lot of leverage we have on our side, and there is, as we said before, also an energy transition at stake and on the move in Europe. And so we will also be able to maybe have an even stronger leverage on Russia in the coming years when it comes to energy supply. So it's not as if we were now cornered by a specific supplier. I don't see this that way. It's much more balanced than this.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for that, and to you both for giving generously of your time. Minister, I might give you the last word, if I may. I know you've a very busy agenda and a lot going on, as you mentioned, in terms of EU 50 as well. So if you wanted to add anything further before I wrap up, Minister.
Yeah, and just briefly on energy and Russian gas, of course, the way to our sovereignty really is to this green transition, to do the transition and to increase our production of renewable energy in our own countries and our own European Union. So that's really, really important for many reasons, primarily environmental, but also in terms of the energy dependence as well and the price fluctuations too. But I really want to move to go all leis an ambassador agus that's in Noelle freshen. Os ru ag hánig sibh anseo an agus gachtain a bhí géisteach agus bratna bhar ar maidin agus na ceisina a hánig se an háach go mín an díspóach seo agan agus bhí an léirú ag an ambassador an hiléir agus am donna bhuiach den card is atáidir an rank agus Aaron. Very grateful for the ambassador's very detailed presentation of the French presidency priorities. Very grateful for the continued solidarity of all EU member states and France as well on various issues that affect this country. I think it's really good to thank everybody who's been here, who's contributed, who's listened. That we're conscious that there's a lot going on in our own country, but actually there's a lot more probably going on in our wider European Union, which we're all very much part of. The very fact that France takes the presidency in order, even as a large member state. Czechia is next. We've had Slovenia. That's the European Union of equals. We saw Roberta Metsola elected president of Parliament from a very small member state, Malta, as well. That's what the European Union is about, in my opinion. Ireland's sovereignty has been massively enhanced by us joining the European Union. Despite the fact that when we did decide to join, we signed the accession treaty and had the referendum, the debate was about sovereignty. And in fact, it always is. But actually, the truth of the matter is our sovereignty, and I would say every member state's sovereignty, is enhanced by sitting around the table and making decisions together. And that can be difficult at times. We can have discussions at times, disagreements at times. But overall, the European Union has contributed hugely to economic progress across the European Union. And we know that for real in Ireland, but also social progress as well. Again, just to thank the Ambassador, thank you, Noelle, and everybody who's been on the call today. I think it's been a very, very interesting discussion. Merci beaucoup.
Good, Minister. Thank you so much, and look fantastic. And thank you to both the Minister and the Ambassador for so generously giving of their time, and you, our audience, for fantastic questions. And I trust your indulgence in going a little bit over schedule, but I knew that the Minister and the Ambassador were anxious to deal with all your questions. It's been fantastic to have such a successful Irish launch, if I may say, Ambassador, to the French Presidency priorities. And on behalf of all of us, and particularly ourselves here in European Movement Ireland, wishing you bon chance, bon courage for the next 6 months. I know you'll be busy, and we certainly look forward to continuing to work with you and your colleagues and engage with you during the French presidency. And to encourage people again to download the French presidency calendar from our website. Also, our good friends and colleagues in Eurofound have asked me to remind you all that the European Foundation Forum, Back to the Future, it's a live event in hybrid and online from Dublin Castle, and it's been jointly supported with the Irish government and the French presidency, and you can get all their information from the Eurofound website. And for us here in European Movement Ireland, this is a really special year, as the Minister outlined. It's EU 50. We are really looking forward to this year because back in 1972, the then Irish Council of the European Movement was the lead organisation campaigning for Irish people to vote yes to Europe. So for us, marking that 50th anniversary of the 1972 referendum of the accession treaty, as the Minister and the Ambassador outlined, is a very special occasion and milestone for our organisation, because we celebrated our 68th birthday last week. So it's always a very special and busy start to the year, and this is an important occasion, and we look forward to working with the Minister, with the government, with the Ambassador and colleagues on marking what is this unique year for Irish EU relations. So until we all meet again, either virtually or in person, perhaps, as the Minister outlined, there may be a bit of light at the end of the tunnel in that regard. Thank you all very much for joining us today. To my own team in EM Ireland, to the Minister's team, the Ambassador's team, thank you for helping us put today's event together. And take care. Slán go fóill a cóide. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.